Okay, so our first speaker today is going to be Helen Rayson-Hill. Helen has also performed both on stage in Melbourne and Brisbane and on television, Neighbours on Channel 10, and Something in the Air, the Australian ABC network. Writing has always been an interest of Helen's, and she is a member of the Writers' Circle Melbourne Lyceum Club. She has written plays for her drama students as well as sketches for amateur theatre. Also an artist specializing in oils, Helen has held successful exhibitions at several Victorian galleries. Helen's short stories and memoir pieces have been published in anthologies, and she has written a children's book, Kid Detectives. The story was inspired by her grandson, who wanted to know how children entertain themselves before electronic devices filled their lives. Helen has long been interested in medieval history, especially in the life of Eleanor of Aquitaine. After many years of research, inspired originally by the play The Lion in Winter by James Goldman, Helen was motivated to write about Eleanor's amazing life. Consequently, Eleanor, the Firebrand Queen, became the first title in this series, which is also out of the bookshop there. So, Eleanor, Firebrand Queen, and the Lion and the Tigress, which is the second volume in the series, is our answer to the crown. Please welcome Helen.
Thank you, David, and good afternoon, everybody from Brisbane. Yes, Eleanor, an amazing woman. The first feminist, I call her, or one of the first. How did I start? I started because I was fascinated by, as David said, by her feistiness, her interest in the life that was around her, her arguments and fights with everybody from the Pope downwards, because she was not about to be put down. She was educated, and which was most unusual for women of her times. And one of the interesting things, one of the other things that inspired me was her father, who was William the 10th of Aquitaine. He had 3 kids. Eleanor was the eldest, a sister, Petronilla, and a little boy also called William. But when Eleanor and Petronilla were quite young, probably very early, 2-3 years of age, their mother died, along with a little boy, which left Eleanor as probably the heir. But in those days, men usually remarried, especially in the position that he was as Duke of Aquitaine. They usually remarried to have that elusive heir, boy. But for some unknown reason, William the 10th of Aquitaine decided to make his daughter Eleanor, at the ripe old age of 6, his heir. So she became heir to the Aquitaine. The Aquitaine in those days was 3/4 of France. France was broken up into a series of fiefdoms back then. And actually, France as such was a little bit around Paris. The rest of it was like Normandy, Brittany, and so on, Toulouse, so on, and then of course the Aquitaine. Eleanor was exceptionally wealthy, very well educated, but when her dad died, when she was only 13, of course she became heir to all that. And not only that, the wealthiest woman. I mean, she would have been, I suppose, like the old queen. She would have been as rich as that, if not more so. So, of course, she was prized. She married Louis of France, which was a total disaster. That marriage was annulled, and then she married Henry II of England, which is what this book is about. And this is the turbulent, written about the turbulent life between Eleanor and Henry II. And they clashed, alpha male, alpha female. 2 highly intelligent people under the same roof. The difference is that whereby she only had 2 daughters to Louis, I mean, she couldn't get Louis into a bed and she couldn't keep Henry out. So she had 9 kids to Henry, and they all pop up in here. And the bit I'm about to read to you, which is sort of about in the middle of the book, Henry has invaded one of her counties, which is the county of Poitou, because she's also the Countess of Poitou. And because there's been a few recalcitrant rebels, they've had a bit of a spat, didn't get along with Henry, and so Henry went in boots and all and caused massive devastation, which has brought her under the her justiciars and panel of rulers who are in the Aquitaine when she's not there, are very disgruntled, they're very unhappy, they've landed on her and said, you know, you should have kept him in line, and of course she realises that she can and she can't. Sometimes he takes notice of her, but most of the time he does not. And so this is after his invasion of Poitou, and she's been having to struggle to get her people to accept what has taken place, and of course they're also semi-blaming her as well, saying you should have stopped him. And of course she's far more the politician out of the two of them. He's just a bit of a naughty little boy. Anyway, this is where we will start. I rose early. I knew I had to interrupt Henry's breakfast after his prayers, his quiet time. It was supposed to be sacrosanct. While he was in his chapel, I quickly dealt with my ablutions, so I was dressed when he returned for his repast. His expression darkened as to why he could not have at least a small part of his day to himself. I drew up a chair to his table. Well, you did not want to talk last night, so I'm afraid you'll have to be now. Apparently, he grudgingly let me continue while he munched his bread and cheese with his ale. I intend to officially proclaim Richard as my heir. I have decided on a simple ceremony in the cathedral before we set out on your campaign to retake Toulouse. I hope it will do much to soothe the querulous rancour in some quarters of the duchy. I got no reply. Are you listening, Henry? Yes, Eleanor. If the justiciars and our people are assured of the continuous succession, it will allay fears as to the fate of the Aquitaine after my death. Henry continued eating in silence. I was beginning to get annoyed, but I persisted. Yesterday I addressed our justiciars to try to dispel the displeasure regarding your foray into Poitou. I do not believe they would have been pleased having their loyalties questioned, or being accused of doing nothing to quell the ripples of discord before they reached your ears, causing you to react the way you did. I also promised reparation for the innocents caught up in the conflict. Henry pushed back his chair. His face was expressionless, but I knew his mind would be buzzing like a swarm of bees. Oh, and for good measure, I went on, I more or less accused Uncle Ralph of not doing his duties seriously enough as regent. Jesus, Mary and Joseph, I suppose expecting extra trips for Toulouse will now be out of the question. I doubt that. They want Toulouse back as much as we do. Now I will leave you in peace. He called after me as I walked to the door. Following that revelation, you had better accompany me, seeing you have stirred Lord Ralph and the panel up like angry hornets. I do not want to be stung. I quipped yesterday. I addressed them as Queen of England. So who do you think I should represent today? Eleanor, as you are first and foremost my queen, we will represent a united front. I hesitated. Should Uncle Ralph and the panel bring up the severity of Anglo-Norman laws, I would be obliged to agree to some extent. I had argued Henry's right to apply his laws as King of England and Duke of Normandy when Poitou rebelled, but in my heart I believed consultation was preferable and force should only be used when all else failed. Henry did not try to confer with anyone. Instead, he galloped into Poitou with cannons blazing. Anglo-Norman rulings were rigid compared with those of the Aquitaine and Poitou, whose laws had been adapted from old Roman influences and had become more flexible over time, encouraging greater consultation. Louis found them incomprehensible, mostly because they gave women more autonomy. My vassals felt that Anglo-Norman rulings were foreign and too severe. In England, I could see the merit of the laws being strict, especially as Henry had to unify the country after 1,000 schisms. It was the only way forward after years of civil war. But that method of governance was not necessary to keep order among my arguing vassals, who in most cases were just like bickering children. If their grievances could be aired, they usually conformed, except for a handful of notorious nobles. To destroy the whole county in retaliation over a few dissidents had created resentment that would be long-lasting. All right, do not just stand there, Eleanor, with an expression like a bad smell has filled your nostrils. You have already interrupted my breakfast and invaded my peace and quiet, so spit out what's on your mind. Well, you refused to talk last night, and if you must know, I think there could be a dispute festering between the merits of Aquitanian law versus the merits of Anglo-Norman law, and just whose side of the debate is Madame Cicero going to argue? My ire was rising at Henry's tone of voice. Once that quip would have been a jest, at the most a jibe. Now it had a nasty edge. I believe it will be best if I remain neutral. Now, I will take my leave. You will find me in the library after I have said good morning to the children. They loved each other, really.
Okay, our second speaker is Geoff Smith. Geoff is a student of yoga, rugby coach, personal trainer, and teacher with over 20 years' experience. He holds a Master of Education, an MBA, and postgraduate certificates in management and leadership. In his role as an educational leader in schools for at-risk youth, Geoff introduces the principles of the 4 pillars to manage burnout among fellow staff, to create enhanced levels of well-being and excellence. Geoff lives in Brisbane, Australia, with his fiancée Ash, dog Bodhi. Okay. All right. 4 pillars: creating a life on your terms. What does it feel like to create a life on your terms, where your health, relationships, finances, and mindset are all supercharged with positive momentum and intent? 4 Pillars offers a template on how to shape your life for fulfillment in these areas, where you learn to master your health, take control of your relationships, grow your finances, and develop a clear and positive mindset. 4 Pillars is your roadmap to a better life. I think that Henry and Eleanor could have done well with the 4 Pillars. Please welcome Geoff Smith.
Thank you, David. It's a nice opportunity to be here and talk about something very passionate and very important and dear to me. And the project began with me reflecting on what a life on my terms would be. And the environment I was in at the stage was quite confronting, working in a trauma environment with students that had a pretty rough upbringing, managing schools from that environment, and then reflecting on if I could create a life on my terms, what would it look like? And I suppose for each person here that would look different, and at different times in our life that's what it would be. So that got me thinking about a life on my terms. What would that be? Who would I spend my time with? How would I spend my time? Where would I spend my time? Because time is probably the one thing that unites us all. It's always running out, and we can either shape in the direction we want or not. So to launch this book today is quite an exciting opportunity for me. I got to thinking about my life and what that would look like, and my life on my terms. And I started to think about, well, to live my life on my terms, I want to be healthy. I want to have vitality and energy to be able to Here's what I want to do. 2, I want to have great relationships. I want to be able to have deep and meaningful relationships with the people closest to me, as well as friendships, business associates, etc. 3rd, and I suppose it's a thing that dominates society, is our finances. Let's face it, if our finances is not working for us, then we are working for our finances. So that's an important element that we consider. And finally, underpinning everything is our mindset. So our mindset is what sets us up for success or failure. And why 4 is because I've observed there's people that invest a lot of time in one area. They might be very, very good at their health at the expense of other areas. They might have great finances, but then be able to not have the relationships they need because they're investing all their time and energy into the finances. So I thought that I don't want to be a specialist in one area. I want to be able to have deep and meaningful connections and live a life across a broad area. It's got me thinking, got me researching, got me putting the time in, got me experiencing, observing life, goods, bads, all those type of things from there. And that was my why. The why is because I want to live the best life I can. From the 4 pillars, I started to look at what's the how. How do I go about doing this? I had a bit of a vision into my mind as to what a great life should look like. And from the research and from what I looked at, a lot of things came back down to our rituals and habits, what we do on a daily basis. So we're not defined by one big event, we're defined by what we do day in, day out, all the little things we do, all the things we don't do. So that got me started to bring this concept together into a little bit of a formula. I don't have all the answers, I never refrain to do, I make mistakes, I'm up and down, I have good days, I have bad days. But I know that if I have these rituals and habits in place, that even on my bad days, I can still maintain progress and still develop and still keep on going. There's a beautiful saying that says we don't raise up to our expectations, we fall to the level of our training. And if our training is at a high level, then even on those bad days, we keep moving forward. So there's a science of success. We know that if we save more than we spend, we'll have more money in our pocket. We know if we eat the right foods and exercise, we'll do a lot to keep our body moving in the right directions. That's a science of success, but there's also an art of fulfillment, a fulfillment that makes us look at each day as a special day. It creates a sense of peace and happiness within us, and a sense of peace and happiness without us. So throughout the book, I start to look at not only the science of success, what does the research say about improvement, about your brain, how the brain works with change and all those type of things that science knows, but also a little bit more about the art of fulfillment. And that's where I suppose I bring in a lot of the yogic philosophy that I've learned and experienced, and see how we can start to combine these into a roadmap for living a greater life. From there, I've developed a bit of an action plan. To me, there's no point having a book to read unless there's something that we can action and move forward from there. So the second half of the book really sets up an 8-week plan to try and progress in those areas, each of those 4 areas. And throughout that, we look at balance, the concept of balance, not over-investing in one at the expense of the other. We look at things such as success and failure. What does failure mean and how we interpret it? We look at things such as discipline, the art of becoming a disciple of something better than ourselves. We look at creating a strong foundation. So these are the things that throughout our 8-week journey we started to develop and have a bit of a map there. I'll read a little bit of it, probably not as long, very short, it's a very short, simple book. But what I wanted to read was, I suppose, one short section of personal account for myself. And really it goes back to about March, April 2020, when lockdown happened. And that's when I suppose we really see how these things work. When things are going great, we don't need too much things. When things go bad, that's when we start to really see how life works for us. Overcoming setbacks. Personal account. COVID-19. In March 2020, our world changed. COVID swept the world at an alarming rate, forcing governments to implement strict lockdowns. Large cities became ghost towns overnight as all non-essential work, travel and gatherings were banned. People raided shops, hoarding non-perishable items and displayed the very worst of our human nature. Our world changed and we were confronted with an unprecedented setback. In Japanese literature, the word for crisis or danger also implies opportunity. In searching through every crisis and finding opportunities, our perspectives can shift to a higher plane. It takes a controlled mindset to see beyond the initial setback, but in these moments, success is guaranteed. It is not what happens to us that matters. What matters is how we respond. Fear is physical, especially during uncertain times. If our body is functioning optimally, we reduce the effects fear has upon it. If there is peace within the body, there can be peace within the mind. Without peace, disease or a state of dis-ease begins. Under lockdown regulations, maintaining progress on the body pillar meant outdoor training and home body weight exercises such as pull-ups, chin-ups and squats. For me, 4 in the morning became the new alarm, which meant additional sleep and recovery. Rising early, going to sleep early and maintaining a disciplined approach to nutrition and hydration were my essential rituals to maintain when building a comeback. With new social distancing laws, contact with other people and maintaining relationships was challenging. Zoom, email, phone and text provided an outlet to support and check in with significant people in my life. Many of us reconnected with lost contacts and extended our care for others. Personal relationships were under considerable stress. Family breakdown and domestic violence increased in a society without many positive coping mechanisms. Support and gentleness was required. Conversations grew deeper as there was nowhere to go. Anxieties, insecurities, and feelings were shared as debriefing and pressure release strategies. In times of challenge, our deep relationships support and nurture us as we also strive to support and nurture others. The financial uncertainty brought by the lockdown was the greatest setback for many. Overnight dependable income stopped, but expenses remained. Investments halved as economies shut down and borders closed. Fear was real, but also once-in-a-lifetime opportunities emerged. Maintaining a safety net of additional savings provided a financial buffer for many and a feeling of certainty. The share market had gone on sale and now was the time to capitalise. These financial decisions in times of great uncertainty set the foundation for future financial success. The mindset we are cultivating through the 4 pillars sees opportunities and acts on them in times of setbacks. American investment guru Warren Buffett states, "Be fearful when others are greedy, be greedy when others are fearful." We insulate ourselves from the negative media invasion and focus on ourselves, our relationships, and our immediate environment. We use our time to build our mindset in preparation for a comeback. Setback does not define us. What does define us is our ability to respond positively when a setback occurs. I will finish with one last bit, right at the end of the book. My final thoughts. Time. From the first breath we take on this planet to our very last, the clock is ticking. How we spend our time between these events determines the deepest quality of our lives. The actions we take or fail to take on a daily, weekly and monthly basis accumulate across the years and shape our lives. How many days we have on this planet is unknown, but we can consciously influence their quality. Over the last 8 weeks, the challenge has been laid for you to consciously create a life on your terms and live to your fullest potential. How you continue to learn, reflect and grow from this point forward determines the quality of your future. The journey of the 4 pillars offers an opportunity to take control of the main areas in our lives that have the greatest impact on our peace, happiness, success. A healthy body, happy relationships, sufficient finances and a strong and positive mindset affect our well-being entirely. We can obtain success in these areas with consistent, dedicated and enthusiastic approaches to improvement and flexibility in our practice. Our practice begins each day with our first thought and where it is directed. It continues throughout the day with our rituals and small actions and concludes with our final reflections as we fall asleep. Creating a great body or lots of money will not make us happy. Creating rituals that lead to continual progress along the 4 pillars will. Developing a positive mindset requires daily attention. And like a muscle, it must be consistently trained to attain results. The cumulative effect of this work brings us peace and harmony on the inside and draws peace and happiness to us from the outside. In continually investing in yourself, you will discover that mastery of the 4 pillars is possible. To master one's health, relationships, finances and mindset requires you to rise above common patterns and traps and to become an uncommon person. A person dedicated to living a life on their highest potential.
Our last title today is Tripping with Nathan, A Different Love Story by Robin Tait. We were saddened to learn of the recent passing of Robin, the author of this book, by a tragic accident. Publication of this book then is not only a tribute to the life of his son Nathan, who was born with cerebral palsy, but a celebration of how his family confronted his disability and to a large degree transcended it. Robin Tait was an academic who completed his PhD in sport management at the University of Oregon, which is also my alma mater. He spent his professional life reading, writing, researching, or teaching about sport. Robin wrote 3 fiction manuscripts and a number of short stories. Besides sport, he was interested in traveling and in working on his rainforest block on the Gold Coast. His wife, Valerie Runyan, has a master's in communication and has spent her professional life working in higher education. Asked what has been her biggest achievement, she responds, being Nate's mom. Valerie is now enrolled in a Juris Doctor to further her skills to advocate for people with disabilities. Rather than try to summarize the book, I'm going to let Valerie do that. Please welcome Valerie.
A different love story, because Robin passed away suddenly in May this year. Actually, he had just signed off on his final edit of the book a few hours before. He would be so proud to be here today with you all. Robin was my husband, soulmate, and the love of both Nathan and my lives. He was unassuming, talented, and a successful man who loved his family above everything else. He made sure Nathan and I were watched over, loved, and taken care of. Nothing was too hard for him. You can see, hear, and feel our epic adventures as told through Robin's voice in the book. The way he writes is the way he was and the way he spoke. Tripping with Nathan, A Different Love Story, will take you on a magical ride with my family, an average family who are able to live an extraordinary life. The book details that with resilience and determination, anything is possible regardless of a person's ability. All our bags, the wheelchair, the cross-country buggy, and ourselves in there. The driver, though, is unconcerned. He starts packing immediately with our customs friend, and I ask him to wait because the first thing to go in has got to be Nathan's wheelchair, and he has to be taken out of the chair so it can be broken down so it takes up less space. Maybe I'm tired and not thinking straight, or maybe it's that absent-mindedness thing that when I get Nathan out of his chair in the usual way, which means left hand under his legs, right hand behind his back, and go to put him in the taxi, I realize that I've got him back to front for a door that's on the right side of the car. I've got his feet towards the back of the seat and his head where his feet should be. Then, helpful hands come from everywhere. And I have to wonder how many people at the airport have nothing else to do but help needy tourists. Kids, adolescents, adults all arrive out of nowhere, all talking, giving, pointing, giving orders. 2 kids scramble into the back of the taxi and lean over the seat to try and take some of Nathan's weight so he can be turned around. Another 2 people get to the front doors and climb over the seats to help by turning him from there. When Nathan gets deposited in the seat, I do a quick count. I think there are 7 people involved in the final deposit. Others poke their heads in windows and offer streams of advice. They're speaking in Spanish, so I don't know if it's good advice or not. I have no idea who all these people are or what their role at the airport is, but right now, as far as I'm concerned, their job is to help Nathan. My boy, he has VIP written all over him. We get Nathan into his seat and our audience turns its attention to our baggage. Bags, buggy, cases, and chair are tried in various places. We pack, unpack, repack. Then we're ready to roll. Doors slam. Val leans out the window and blows our healthy crowd a kiss. As the taxi starts to move, I look out of the back window. The crowd of helpers is standing in the road and waving. Some of them are waving with 2 hands. I wonder if that's a Costa Rica thing. We pull out onto the main road. We're here. We've made it. If we can travel all this way to a 3rd world country, we can go anywhere. Mind you, it wasn't always that easy. So the second section I would like to read you is about how we got there. So there were so many processes that we had to go through before we could have actually gotten to that point in our lives. We knew then that Nathan was never going to walk a single step, lift a spoon to his mouth, date a girl, swim a lap, or tell his mom and dad that he loved them. So he was disabled. We finally could say it with a shrug. It added some hardship to our lives, but what is life without hardship? Once we were able to tell ourselves these things, we moved into the 4th and final phase. We both wish we had started with this phase, but I guess we had to get the grieving, hoping, and adjusting out of the way. The final phase of adjusting to our sense of disability was, let's get on with it. In this, there was no grief. Instead, we concentrated on what Nathan could do, not by grieving over what he couldn't, To reach this phase, we had to let go of hoping that he would achieve the developmental milestones we earlier hoped he would achieve. We had to accept what we had. Once we achieved that, we were able to build Nathan's repertoire of meaningful experiences. It should be understood, though, that we only reached this stage because we got a lot of help from Nathan. This is not a rosy interpretation. It is the indisputable truth. He helped us to understand that what he couldn't do only looks frightening if you ignore what he could do. He could make the people around him smile, he could make them laugh, and he had shown us a number of times that above all else, he was a fighter. He wanted to live, and from that automatically follows that he wanted to make the best of his life. It should be said that we reached the final phase of acceptance and significant help from a number of Nathan's carers. Carers were a huge part of his life. We possibly 100 of them over the years. Some of them we wouldn't recognize now if we saw them. They only stayed long enough to decide that Nathan was in the too hard basket, or they turned out to be a little less than 100% reliable, and we had to let them go. Others stayed and made an impact. A very small number have become close friends. Kelly was one of Nathan's carers, a student nurse. She looked after Nathan when he was 6, 7, and 8. It was a crucial time for us. It was when we were giving up on those developmental milestones, and when we were just starting to look instead at what Nathan could do. Kelly helped us through the peaks and troughs at that time. She came home late with Nathan one night. I'd been worried. I gave her a serve. Unperturbed by my angst, she said, "We went to buy Nathan a little beach chair. He told me he wanted one, but he wouldn't tell me if he wanted a green or a red one. So we had to stay here until we told him." I was skeptical. How did you know he wanted a beach chair? You're going to the beach for a holiday soon. I told him about World Beach Chairs and he said he wanted one. Hell, he can't talk. How did he tell you he wanted one? She looked at me with contempt. He's your son and you don't know how to listen to him other than listening to his voice? When I asked if he wanted one, he told me with his face that he did. It just took him a long time to tell me which color. We have been told by various experts of different ways of communicating, but methods like computer programs and other things undoubtedly worked for other kids, but not for Nathan. Kelly taught us to watch Nathan's face closely and interpret what he wanted to say from his expressions and movements of his head. There was not the least doubt in her mind that he listened and that he could process what he heard. The skill of watching Nathan intently and patiently was one we were still working on, and we were getting better at it. You can tell lots from a twist of the head, a quirk of the eyebrows, a frown, a smile. Like Kelly said, he could tell us what he was thinking. It just took him a while. There was another time when Nathan was still taking his food orally, when Kelly announced, "I think I've taught Nathan how to chew gum." It's not really a skill that he needs help, he replied. She gave him that look again. It's a good way for him to practice chewing, she said. And indeed, she had taught him to chew gum. But Val kiboshed it. She was afraid of Nathan inhaling a lot of gum into his lungs. But what it showed us, though, was that, like Kelly, we should have more faith in what Nathan could do. Nathan, of course, did not set out to help us get over worrying about his disability or to encourage us to get on with our lives. But make no mistake, he helped us with both of those things. While we were worrying about how to deal with his immobility, his lungs, his epilepsy, vision problems, learning difficulties, speech, it gradually dawned on us that Nathan was a happy little bloke. He wasn't worried about what he couldn't do. He was enjoying his life as it unfolded. When we saw that, we started paying more attention to what he had to teach us. A significant lesson came when at 7 years he showed us how well he could tune into what was going on around him. We were Christmas shopping. You know what Christmas shopping is like. You know what Christmas shopping malls are like at Christmas. Buzzing, hurrying, happy mass of humanity. When we entered the mall, Nathan's head came up, his eyes opened wide, and he smiled. He stayed alert and smiling for the 3 hours that we were there. He couldn't run into a store and buy something. He couldn't tell us what he wanted us to buy. He had no use for 99% of what was on sale. And what he did have a use for wasn't exciting anyway. But he was happy. He was happy to be there.